Projects Victoria. We also have Ben Ryan. Ben is the Director of the Melbourne Rail Project. Is that the full title, Ben? Yeah. We have Megan Cusack, who is the Deputy Director of Comms and Engagement at Rail Projects Victoria. I'd just like to thank you for coming, for making the time to come and brief the councillors tonight. We have two apologies, Councillor Maria Kerr and also Councillor Trung Lu. Both have got an interest in this, so we will be providing them with just a recording of tonight's presentation, but also councillors, when we provide the recording, it's just appropriate that it's just for the councillors only. So we have got information that can be made publicly available, but this presentation is just for you. So we'll remind you of that when we pop that into the portal. I'd also like to welcome some of our staff that may not have met the councillors. So I did introduce Leanne, John, Rebecca, and who else did I? And Adrian. But we also have Sam Cunningham, who's just logged on as well. So welcome, Sam. These are the team that have been actively working with rail projects on, well, liaising, I should say, to get us to this point. So needless to say, we were pretty excited when it was confirmed that it's going to go ahead, but now we're keen for detail, as much as you could possibly give. So, so Megan, are you going to share screen?
I'll just start that now, Helen.
Thank you.
Can you see, everyone see that?
No.
Oh, hang on.
Now we can.
Yeah.
Right, I'll hand over to Evan. Thank you.
Okay, so we're good to go, Helen?
Yes, please, Evan. Thank you.
Righto. Well, good to be here also. It's taken a fair while to get to this point, as you know, and for a whole lot of good reasons, understandable reasons. But I have to say we were a bit concerned with the COVID chaos that it might change the funding arrangements, but it's great to see the federal government and now the state government have recommitted to the project, and we're now got the green light to get on with it. What I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about who Rail Projects Victoria is and what we're doing, step through the rationale for the airport project, and then Ben is going to talk to the scope and then how we interact with Brimbank going forward. So we don't want to take too long in the presentation because we want to have plenty of time for you guys to ask questions. But I will move into it, and feel free to stop me if you want as I go through. And you can ask questions as you go or leave them to the end. So Megan, if you could go to the next slide, please, and the next slide. Just a bit about who we are and how we fit in, just to give you a bit of context. It's a fairly busy slide, but the important things to understand from this is that ultimately our minister is Jacinta Allen, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. And there's a key interface between the Department of Transport, which is Paul Eunice's team. They are effectively the network planners, the rail network planners. They work out what the demands of the network are, what projects are needed in order to meet those demands. But then they throw across to us as Major Transport Infrastructure Authority as the deliverers. So we deliver their projects for them. We do the business cases, we work out what it's going to cost, and then it goes back to the department. They get the funds and confirm that we get on with the project. And under the Major Transport Infrastructure Authority, which you can see that opposite the Director General bar, the blue bar in the middle, below that is about $80 billion worth of projects now that we've got going. And that's split across 5 different entities: Level Crossing Removal Authority, which I'm sure you're familiar with, the North East Link, which is a big road project to the northeast of Melbourne, the Major Road Projects Victoria, which is the old Vic Roads Major Projects area that is now under MTIA, the Westgate Tunnel, which I'm sure you're also familiar with, and then there's us on the right-hand side there. You can see Rail Projects Victoria, and under us comes the Metro Tunnel, a lot of work in the regions, Regional Rail Revival, now the Melbourne Airport Link, Sunbury line upgrade, which I think you'll also be familiar with. A development work we're doing out in the west, the Western Rail plant, which is critical to what we're talking about today. And then finally, the other project that's just been announced is Geelong Fast Rail. So we've got a bit over $30 billion worth of work under Rail Projects Victoria now. And of course, we're now into the Airport Rail Link, which is a very significant part of our business. So if you go to the next slide, and just very briefly, this sort of shows diagrammatically where our projects are, and the Metro Tunnel project, which runs through the heart of the city, I think you're probably familiar with. That's the orangey line, but also now coupled with the airport link. So the orange line shows the full extent of the airport link. The Sunbury line upgrades in yellow on the left-hand side of the slide. And then the purple lines are all the regional work. And we've got about $4 billion of upgrade work going on now out on all the major regional lines, which is really significant for the country areas. So there's a lot happening under Rail Projects Victoria. What I'll now do is focus on why we're really here, which is about the Melbourne Airport Rail itself. And this project, as you all know, has been a very long time coming, but it is really crucial to the efficient operation and the ongoing prosperity of Victoria. I mean, a rail network connected to the airport will be a major boost to the airport's long-term growth and therefore Victoria. If you go to the next slide, please. We all know that COVID has really knocked the airline passenger scene around, but the view is that'll take a couple of years before it bounces back. And certainly by the time we deliver this project, it should be back well and truly to where it was before COVID. And the significance of this slide, pre-COVID annual demand to the airport at the moment is about 37 million people a year go to the airport. And the forecast is that by 2038, so not that far away, it'll be getting close to 70 million people. And that's about the size of, say, Heathrow in London or Changi in Singapore is today. It's a massive, massive airport. So with these growth, no, stay on that other slide, please, Megan. So with these growth forecasts, despite the fact that we've got pretty good road access to the airport via the Western Ring Road and the Tullamarine Freeway, having a rail link is going to be a response to the inevitable continued congestion and the car parking issues that are going to come into play as the growth continues. And the airport themselves, they've got massive expansion plans to try and manage this growth, and this airport rail link fits in with those master development plans of the airport. So they're pretty happy that we're out there and getting underway as well. Now, the next slide, please, Megan. To find the right solution for an airport link, we obviously did a fair bit of research to understand how people travel to and from the airport. And there are a few fundamentals here that are here to give you a bit of context. And there's probably a bit of confusion around where the demand for an airport or the airport in Melbourne comes from. And the research shows that most people who are going to the airport originate from home. And that's even if they're travelling for business. And as we all know, you're going to Sydney or somewhere, you predominantly leave from your home, not from the sort of CBD area. And therefore, travel time, particularly to and from the city, is not necessarily what drives the demand for people to go to the airport. It's usually where are they coming from? And just as important as travel time are the frequency of the service, the reliability of the service, and the simplicity of it, the number of times they have to transfer by train in order to get to the airport. So the bottom line for us was that we needed a solution that gave the maximum amount of connectivity for people across both Melbourne metropolitan area and the regions, the regional Victoria area. Go to the next slide, Megan. And As has been announced, the chosen alignment is via Sunshine and into the Metro Tunnel, as opposed to other alternatives that we looked at from Sunshine in that involve tunnels into Southern Cross and other ways of getting into Southern Cross Station. And that link there, you can see the blue dotted line, which is the Metro Tunnel. That's sort of 9 kilometres of twin tunnels that we're building at the moment. The airport link will come via Sunshine and link into it at South Kensington, and then can go all the way through to Cranbourne and Pakenham without stopping. And using this alignment gives us the best way of integrating the airport services with the entire network. And I'll show you a bit more about that shortly. You go to the next slide, Megan. So some of the key features are shown over the next 2 slides. Start with the left-hand side here, 10-minute service. So that's 6 trains an hour, which is a really frequent service. You're not going to be waiting long for a train to get to or from the airport. And the second point there is that it's a continuous journey into the heart of the CBD and beyond, in that there's some myths around town that everyone would be transferring at Sunshine. It's not the case. The trains are continuous. They stop at Sunshine, but they continue on their journey into CBD and beyond, and under 30 minutes to the heart of the CBD. As I said before, connectivity, the third point there, that's the fundamental reason for our rationale for selecting this alignment is connectivity, and you'll hear me talk about that a few times. It just maximises the amount of people that can get to the airport. And I've got a diagram that shows this a bit better shortly. The fourth point there is about providing direct access to Melbourne's key business areas. There's a lot of tourism, health, education precincts that get direct connectivity via this alignment. And the last point on this slide is that it's consistent with previous findings that numerous rail studies have done. So whilst we've done a refresh of that and an independent assessment of it, we've still come up with the same solution that has been around over previous studies. Yeah, the next slide. Thanks, Megan. Another bit of a myth that is floating around is that by choosing the Metro Tunnel alignment for the airport trains to go through, that we then chew up capacity, and that means that there's no capacity available for the broader issues that we're working through in the West. I mean, how the trains come in from Melton and Wyndham Vale in particular. And that's not right. Using the Metro Tunnel for the airport trains still means that there's about 45% of the capacity of the tunnel. So we're using just over half of the capacity of the Metro Tunnel by the trains that come in from Sunbury and the trains that come in from the airport. And the reason there's that massive uplift still available in the tunnel is that there's capacity for more trains to run through it, so up to 24 trains an hour, but also the trains that do run through it at the moment will have the capacity to be expanded by about 40% in length. So we're building all of the stations in the Metro Tunnel project and what we will build at the airport to allow for future 10-car sets on the trains, or 10-car carriages on the trains, whereas when they start up, they'll only have 7 cars. So there's really good potential for expansion of services into the Metro Tunnel. The second point there is about the new trains that are being built at the moment, the new high-capacity Metro trains. They'll be very modern. They'll have plenty of space, very passenger-friendly, so they'll be ideal for running services out to the airport. And the third point is that there's no mixing of different types of trains. A really important factor about modern metro-style systems is that you have homogeneous fleet, or the same types of trains, so you can run the right timetable, you can have the same service patterns, and you don't have different types of trains that tend to impact on the other types of trains. And then the last point on this slide is that using the Metro Tunnel, it's a massive commitment of cost in itself, using it to run the airport trains is a really good use of the state's money or the public funds. It's a lot less expensive than some of the other options with tunnels that go from Sunshine into Southern Cross, for example. Far less expensive, less disruption in delivering it, and we can get this done quicker. If we go to the next slide. Now, this is a busy slide. I said the slide before was busy. This is even busier. But I think the essence of what I'm saying about connectivity is displayed in this slide. And whilst it's a bit hard to follow, if you look at Melbourne Airport, which is up in the top towards the sort of middle and left of the screen, thank you. It's the orangey line that goes all the way through the centre of the city and eventually down to Cranbourne and Pakenham down in the southeast. The benefit of this is that there are about 30 stations along that alignment where someone can just turn up to the station, get on a train and get off at the airport. And then all of the other lines in Melbourne and the regional network for Victoria, rail network, connect to the airport with just one change. So if you're coming in from Mernda or Hurstbridge or Lilydale or Frankston, you just have one change to get on an airport train and then you're at the airport. So that gets back to that point I made before about the ease of travel for people is just as big a criteria as it is how quickly they get there. The other point to note here about the regional lines, which are the purple lines you see there, is that if you're coming from Bendigo, Ballarat or Geelong, you'll transfer at Sunshine, and that enables a bit of a hub at Sunshine, as you're all acutely aware, opportunities for people to get off at Sunshine, work and develop, but also you get that added benefit of the connectivity to the airport that drives development in your region. And then if you're coming in from Traralgon, one change at Pakenham and you're on a train that gets you to the airport. So the connectivity is huge. And then the other important factor about this slide is the precincts that get direct access from this alignment. There's obviously Sunshine. Footscray is another precinct that's, as you know, is developing quickly. Look at all the apartment development around Footscray, it's amazing. Arden, which is one of the sites of our stations for the Metro Tunnel that has about 14 hectares of space that will be opened up after we finish for development. So that's going to become a big hub. Royal Melbourne Hospital are already looking at putting a development in there. Parkville, up Melbourne Uni, Royal Melbourne, Royal Women's, Peter Mac, Peter Doherty, that health and education precinct is huge. You get about 100,000 people a day come in and out of there. So great connectivity to that region, that precinct, I should say. Then coming down to State Library there, which you can see almost in the centre of the page at the top of the CBD, connection to RMIT, which is right there, and of course the State Library and business precincts in Melbourne. The other station at the bottom of that central part of the slide, the Town Hall station, it's really the heart of Melbourne, access to not just the city, but sporting precincts, the art precinct. Anzac Station, you can see a bit further down, which is right at the head of St Kilda Road, which is one of the busiest business precincts in Victoria. And then, of course, further on down to places like Monash Uni at Clayton and beyond. So the ability for people to get good access to these precincts from the airport is really significant. And that probably is the essence of why we've chosen this alignment and what it is. I'll now hand over to Ben, who will talk through some of the scope.
Thanks, Evan. So just a very brief overview of the scope of the project for you all. If we start at the top of the page, we'll be building a new station in the heart of the airport precinct there. We've started some good conversations with Melbourne Airport about what that will look like. The alignment will then follow Airport Drive, for those who are familiar with the area out there. So that was built a few years ago. There's provision down the median of that of that road to allow for the tracks that we need to build for airport rail. So it'll be 2 tracks, one going to the airport, one going away from the airport. We then come over from beyond Sharps Road over the top of the Western Ring Road, or the M80, quite a significant bridge that we'll be building over the top of that. There's no columns in the middle of it, so that we try and minimise the disruption to that pretty busy freeway. One of the advantages of the solution via Sunshine is that a lot of the footprint is contained within an existing rail corridor. So the section where that blue kind of oval is known as the Albion-Jacana freight corridor. So it's an existing freight line. So we follow that freight line all the way down towards Albion. Now we've got to do a bit of work underneath the Calder Freeway into some other roads to fit the 2 new tracks in through there. And we've also got to duplicate the Maribyrnong River Bridge, which is quite a significant structure. And for those who are familiar with it, the existing structure is a beautiful old heritage bridge that's been there for a long time. And then as we get closer into the Albion precinct and Sunshine, we thread the 2 new tracks in to fit in the existing Sunbury corridor. And as Evan said, connections at Sunshine Station there for both regional and metropolitan passengers. So if we go to the next one, Megan. So this will be a premium station at the airport itself, and as Evan's noted before, it'll be what we call a turn up and go service. So a service every 10 minutes. So you don't have to worry about a timetable or looking at your watch to see when the next one will be there. It'll be a 10-minute service. Importantly, it will allow for, you might be aware that the government has a project called Suburban Rail Loop, which in time is an orbital railway line that goes all around Melbourne, connecting all the train lines. So the station that we build at the airport will allow for the Suburban Rail Loop to connect to it in the future. And as Evan noted earlier, the growth in the airport's really significant. So they've got significant growth plans in terms of their terminal and also how their road network works around there. So the station that we build will consider all of those items, so that we build it not only for a really good customer outcome today, but also for the future. So the next few slides are just some imagery of what the project will look like. So this is that bridge that I spoke of over the top of the M80, and then the distance there you can see it joins into that existing freight corridor. The next one shows the railway lines as they go underneath the Calder Freeway. So there's quite a significant amount of bridge work that we need to do underneath the Calder there to widen out those bridges, both on the freeway itself and on some of the on and off ramps and adjacent roads around there. So we'll do that in a way that minimises the disruption to those freeways as best as we can. The next one shows how it will actually connect into the metro tunnel. So that's the portal for the western side of the tunnel is adjacent to South Kensington Station, as you can see there. This is actually nearly built now. So one of the benefits of using this is, we're using infrastructure that's being built now, so we can actually deliver the service a little bit earlier than some of the other options that we looked at. And the last one is just a picture of those new trains that Evan's spoken about, the latest, most modern trains that will be built and commissioned into service when Metro Tunnel comes online. So probably just to summarise all the points that we've raised today, when we developed this solution, we wanted something that the most possible people could use, and it needs to be something that is frequent and reliable with the best possible connectivity. So 10-minute services, direct connectivity to those 30 stations on the Cranbourne-Pakenham line, as well as a journey to the heart of the CBD in under half an hour. Evan spoke to all the connections to those really important health, education, tourism, business parts of Melbourne. One thing probably hasn't come up elsewhere in the presentation is, off the back of a COVID recovery, these projects support huge numbers of jobs. And importantly also, we have mandated requirements around training the next generation of people who can build, plan and deliver these types of projects. So apprentices, trainees, cadets will have over 1 million hours of work through those people. And completion later on this decade, 2029, is the commitment that we're making. So the the next slide just sort of walks through what we've got planned in the near term and then beyond. So obviously off the back of the announcement by the Prime Minister and the Premier a couple of weeks ago, that's now enabling us to kick off a broad program of community and stakeholder engagement. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, particularly about the work that we're going to do with Brimbank. While we're doing all of that engagement, we're in the process of further developing the design for the project and finalising the business case, which will be submitted to government early next year. Through next year, we've got some pretty major planning approval processes that we've got to run through for both approvals on the state land and the airport itself sits on the Commonwealth land. So we've also got a Commonwealth approval process that we've got to go through. And we'll also start to do some market engagement with the contracting industry to engage with them to understand how the best way to package it up and deliver the project, and then start that procurement process. And that then leads into a construction commencement in 2022 and completion later on in the decade, as I said. So you're probably all interested as to the next steps with Brimbank yourself. So perhaps go to the next one, Megan. So we've got a pretty significant program of meetings planned out that we're certainly my team's really keen to get into. As Evan said, this is a long time coming, so we're keen to start engaging. They actually kick off next Tuesday with a couple of conversations with Neil and his team about the governance and how we propose to work together as we start this engagement process. Next week also, we'll be launching an online survey, and that will be supported by a mail out of over 33,000 households with some postcards that will point people towards both the online survey, which is designed to ask people, what's important to them, how do they see the project fitting into the local community, and how would they like to use the airport rail project. So those 33,000 properties will receive a postcard next week. What's on the screen here is a screenshot of what we would normally do in person, but we're unable to because of the COVID situation at the moment. So we're setting up what we're calling a virtual community information session. So this is something that you'll be able to access and the community will be able to access from their home. It'll be similar to an in-person one where there'll be screens up where you can go and seek information about various different aspects of the project. There will also be, brochures that will be provided in multiple different languages, in Greek, in Vietnamese and in Italian, noting the community that is pretty diverse in Brimbank. So we're trying to reach out to as many people as we possibly can. And we've also got a website, airportrail.vic.gov.au, which has a lot of other information about the project. As we come back after Christmas, I can't believe it's Christmas in a few weeks, but after we come back after Christmas next year, we'll then kick off obviously some meetings with community groups, but an ongoing program of engagement with both councillors and the officers within Brimbank. And as I said, our team's pretty keen to get into that. So that's all the presentation that Evan and I had today. So we're happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Okay, Councillor Lancashire, you're first. Hi, Councillor Ball.
Hello, Helen.
Hello.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. Just a question on this community engagement. There's an enormous amount of rail transport going through Sunshine, and the council has been doing a lot of work on modelling, making the most of that Sunshine interchange and getting the best economic value out of it possible. Some of that's included at looking at building over the railway line to minimise noise, and then on top of that have commercial, residential type of development. Can you, how much real flexibility is there in terms of that engagement and making sure that councils that want to, like us, that want to leverage off that as much economic as possible, how much scope is there to do that sort of thing, or how much are we locked in?
The good thing about Sunshine is that the precinct development aspect and the rail delivery aspect both come under Jacinta Allen with her sort of precinct hat. And we've been working very closely with DJPR, Department of Jobs and planning, precinct planning. So whilst when we deliver the rail infrastructure, we'll add platform space and additional connectivity between the platforms so that people, particularly from the regions, can transfer as efficiently as possible to either get into the metro tunnel or get onto the airport line. We generally will be doing that fairly close to the existing rail infrastructure, but once we define what we need to service the railway line, we're working very closely with DJPR, whose interest is common to yours, about what do you do for the broader precinct, how do you develop it, how do you get it growing as economically. And fair to say there's a bit of work to go in that space, but it's by no means, other than the structure that's needed for the airport infrastructure, I think there's plenty of opportunity to be talking with more so DJPR about what development opportunity there is around the station. So in fairness to them, we have to tell them exactly how much we need to build the railway infrastructure, but then it opens up the rest of it for that future development. So to add a long way of answering your question to say, I think there's good opportunity for you to be engaged with all of us to have your say about what you think the opportunities are.
Councillor Tarkos?
Thank you for the presentation. It was really insightful. And I guess my question is around employment and jobs that this project that could create for our region. As you might be aware, we've got quite high unemployment, and this would be a fantastic local project that we could also leverage off for our local people. What kinds of employment contracts or agreements will be in place for this project when it starts?
So it'll be split up into a number of major packages, but the real jobs focus comes at the next level down, the subcontractor level and supplier level. And all of the contracts have quite stringent local job content requirements in them. Now, whether that means the local suppliers and fabricators and subcontractors immediately in the Sunshine Precinct or in the Brimbank Council area are employed or not is really up to the contractors and their tender process. But there's definitely a high level of obligation on the contractors to employ local. It's sort of over 90% type content. So they're not going to bring in people from interstate or overseas, other than where it's really specialist activities that are required. So good opportunity. And that is one of the major initiatives, both federally and state, in proceeding with this and not stealing our $10 billion and going off and spending it on COVID coverage. It is about stimulating jobs for people. And the 8,000 jobs that Ben referred to is really critical in all of that.
Thank you.
Councillor Borg?
Thanks, Helen. I noted the change in language from earlier announcements about the Sunshine Super Hub, and if I'm not mistaken, even in this presentation, it was referred to as some hub. Can you give us a sense of the scale of works required at the Sunshine Station in order to accommodate for the Melbourne Airport Rail? And will there be new platforms constructed at Sunshine?
Yeah, so under our scope, there's definitely additional platform space. There'll be one major new platform and there'll be expansion of existing. But equally as important will be the connectivity between those platforms. So, I mean, we're all aware that it wasn't that long ago that a new concourse was built, new platforms were built under the Regional Rail Link project. We're going to expand the concourse arrangements to have better connectivity between the platforms, so that someone coming in from the country or from Sunbury can easily transfer either to the airport line, or if you're a country traveller, you can transfer to either the metro tunnel or the airport line as efficiently as possible. But it is a staged approach, as all of our major infrastructure projects are. and the future, there will be opportunity for future development as well, because another part of what Rail Projects Victoria is doing is looking at the Western Rail Plan and what that means for more services from Melton and Wyndham Vale. That in itself has another impact on Sunshine. So whatever we do in the work Ben does under the airport will be future-proofed or done knowing that we've got more work to then happen when we finalise the Western Rail Plan, and those sequence of investments are also funded and delivered. So I think it's a progressive thing about the expansion of the Sunshine Station, but there's no question it will continue to grow. What we need is a proper master plan, and it goes back to the previous question, to make sure that we set that right for the railway infrastructure, and then the precinct can develop around it, knowing that we're future-proofed it.
Thank you for that.
I'll go Councillor David, then Councillor Lancashire.
Is that for me?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Madam CEO. My question is similar to Councillor Ball. We haven't pinpointed where roughly the station will be. That's one. And the second bit of curiosity for me, that is, what about the overpass? What will happen to the overpass?
You're talking about Hampshire?
The Hampshire Road overpass, yeah.
So ultimately, I think we all know that has to go. But as part of this, as part of this stage, it won't be going. It's really what I was referring to before about progressive investments. But we know that ultimately you need railway line infrastructure arrangements there that cater for the western section, and I think that's the time when there's probably just no way that road can stay where it is. But it won't be done as part of the airport. But we're working on the future stages now, as I said before, as part of that Western Rail Plan work that we're doing.
You make my night. Thank you.
Councillor Lancashire.
Thank you. Through the chair. Rail projects, you're considering new stations. Is there some scope to look at Keilor Park and Sunshine North as part of those new stations? Is there room to move on the planning at this stage?
Definitely. So one of the initiatives we're still doing is looking at what locations would be appropriate for future stations. What's the demand needed? What's the travel time impact? What's the potential jobs growth in the areas? So we're looking at that at the moment, and that'll be finalised as part of the business plan process. Ultimately, it's a decision for government, because the more stations you stop at, the longer the travel time, of course, and the cost goes up. But certainly we're looking at all that at the moment as we develop the business case. And we know there's a lot of interest out there.
It certainly is. Thank you very much.
Councillor Branton and then Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Helen. I've got two questions. First question, are you utilising the existing track between Tottenham and Sunshine Station?
I'll let you talk to that if you like, Ben.
Sorry, I'll just unmute myself. So when the Metro Tunnel comes online, all the Sunbury trains will run on the pair of tracks that runs between Tottenham and Sunshine and the portal at South Kensington there. So the airport tracks will join into.
So will that section have to be widened?
No.
Great. Okay. Second question is, there's quite a lot of areas along the rail corridors with a lot of endangered species in there. And any areas where the tracks are going to be widened, are the environmental impacts have they already been identified? And are you going to have maps available to us so that we can see which areas are going to be impacted?
Keep going, Ben.
Okay. Yeah, so we're doing some of the investigation work that we've been doing for the last 12 or 18 months is to do with exactly that. So what are the impacts that the project will have on flora and fauna and there's some very significant species in and around Sunshine that are listed on the federal environmental register.
Yeah.
We're planning the project to avoid those really significant species at Sunshine, and then the rest of the impact they're called impact assessments that we do, they'll be finalised as part of that planning approval strategy, and consultation with affected stakeholders will be undertaken as part of that planning process.
And so will we be able to see the maps of the areas that are impacted?
Yeah. So as part of the engagement process, we'll share with you the alignment itself and any affected land that the project runs through.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Councillor Borg?
What will be the impact of building the Marl on Ballarat Road?
Again, Ben, you can talk to that.
Yep. So the solution that we have is pretty complex in and around that Ballarat Road precinct, and we've been really careful about how we develop that in recognition of all the infrastructure that's around there. So what we've landed on is a solution where the railway lines will likely be elevated over the top of Ballarat Road and come down to grade between Sunshine and Albion stations there, so that Ballarat Road will largely be unaffected by the work.
Councillor Nguyen? We can't hear you.
Hello.
Yes, yay.
Awesome. I'm just mindful of the fact that, currently our transport system gets quite congested during peak hour. So like 8 to 10, 5 to 7 on the way home and from the city. Like, have you guys accounted for the fact, that maybe both residents and travellers will use the train? Like, will it be able to manage the capacity for that?
Yep, definitely. It's a key focus of the modelling exercise that we've undertaken. Most of the time, the peak, so you get crowding in the peaks. Most of the time, travellers to the airport won't be affected by that. But there will be times during peak when it'll be a bit more difficult. But these new trains that are being designed are much bigger internally. They're not actually any bigger externally, but there's a lot more space inside. So the patronage loading has taken into account the demand of the normal rail network and the fact that there will be additional people going to the airport, because the airport load is spread throughout the whole day. It's not all at the peak like the business peak is.
And is it 10 minutes around the clock, like 24 hours?
It's 10 minutes for all the time that the metro network is operating, which is from, I don't know, 5 in the morning until till sort of 1 in the morning. And then where there's the period between when the metro system's not working, there'll be bus services that still service the airport.
Oh.
Is it still going to be SkyRail buses?
Yes, but whether the SkyRail bus that what the SkyRail bus that goes from Southern Cross Station to the airport, we just need to work through with government what the impact of that is, because obviously people will have a choice, but people will tend to use the train rather than the bus when there's a direct equivalent there. But there's a lot of growth forecast, and there are different people who want different modes of transport. Southern Cross Station is where the Skybus originates at the moment. There'll still be a demand for people in that area, but the metro tunnel alignment for the airport means that you spread that load considerably. So there'll be a lot of different people coming from different areas, not all having to get into Southern Cross Station to get on a train or Skybus. So the loading on Skybus will definitely change. It's a matter of how we manage that. And remember, Skybus doesn't just come from Southern Cross, it comes from various areas around metropolitan Melbourne.
Councillor Lancashire?
Another big project for us, of course, is the Western Intermodal Freight Terminal. And just the airport rail link, how does that take into account the Western Goods Line and work with that?
Yep, well, it does, but perhaps I'll let you talk to that, Ben.
Yeah, so the Western Intermodal Freight Terminal is going through a business case process at the moment within Department of Transport, and under Department of Transport is where Freight Victoria lives. So that's part of a separate business case process. But what we've been doing in developing airport rail is ensuring that the freight task that is pretty significant and growing for both rail and road networks is considered as part of the development work that we've been doing. So in the future, when the Western Intermodal Freight Terminal is built, the airport rail scope that we've developed considers how that will fit into the rest of the network. The rail network's pretty complex in Melbourne, so when you do these types of investments, you need to consider impacts not only for today but into the future. So we've done that in the freight space.
Thank you.
Councillor Ball.
The room for another quick question?
Yeah, that's
regarding.
While we've got them.
Yeah. Regarding Albion Station. What's going to happen to Albion Station, considering the additional tracks to the airport? Will be very hard to envisage going through Albion.
So the proposal that we've got is to not impact on Albion Station directly. So our project doesn't impact Albion Station, but there are obviously other works that Department of Transport are looking at around stations in that area, and potentially as part of the Western Rail Plan works that'll be looked at, but it's not part of the airport. It's not going to be impacted by the airport. Is your concern about it being impacted or about opportunities to?
I was wondering if you can confirm that Albion Station will be rebuilt as part of the Melbourne Airport Rail project.
Yeah, not as part of the Airport Rail project, no.
Okay. What about as part of the Western Rail Plan, potentially?
Don't know yet, Helen. That's something we're still looking at, and it's really DOT considering, because the length of trains comes into play here. Depending on how long your train is, do you need to extend platforms? Once you start touching platforms, does that trigger an upgrade? When you also consider the demand load on each of the stations. So that's stuff that Department of Transport are looking at as part of their network planning strategy at the moment.
Would the master plan consider that something like that, Evan?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what they're looking at the moment.
Things there, okay.
So I don't know if it does or it doesn't yet, but that's what Paul Eunice and his team look at. Better ring Paul up.
We'll give Paul a call, yeah.
He sort of knows your area fairly well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah. For the councillors, the new councillors, Paul was the CEO at Brimbank prior to me, so yeah, he knows the area well. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, I've got a couple more questions. Pretty interested in hearing more about this. So with the 33,000 puppies that you're going to contact, is it like a variety of residential and business? Is it certain suburbs? Is it good spread?
Ben?
Sorry, I'll just unmute myself. So it's a pretty broad cross section of the community, and I don't have the specific details about who they are, but Megan probably does if she wants to chime in.
Thanks, Ben. Yes, it is a cross section of businesses and residents along a defined section of the corridor, taking into account through from airport all the way just past Sunshine. So we do touch slightly below that area there, but 33,000. I'm happy to share, particularly with Rebecca, the map of the distribution area if you want. I'm happy to do that.
That would be good.
Okay. Yeah, and one more final thing before you guys leave. So, like, would you guys consider having like 10 minutes around the clock?
That's not part of the solution we've come up with, because you're integrating with the broader metropolitan network, it needs to be consistent with the way the network runs. Now on weekends at the moment, they do run around the clock. It's really up to Department of Transport if they want to expand it, or really ministers, if they want to expand that in the future. There's potential to do it. But right now, because we're integrating with an existing network, it needs to be consistent with the operating hours of the network.
Okay. I don't think there's any other questions. Any final call, please?
Oh, one more. Okay, all right. So with the expansion of the stations, you got airport and the Sunshine Station. Like, are you going to create spaces not just for business, but also like recreation, stuff like that as well?
Around which stations? Sorry.
Sunshine and the airport stations.
Well, the airport is a very constrained environment, so and we need to now start working pretty closely with APAM, they call them, the airport people, because it's really about what they want out there in their world. Probably not for us to be adding recreation facilities there. And again, at Sunshine, it's a bit like the answer I had before. What we will do is what we need for rail infrastructure and obviously the supporting interface for parking and buses and so forth. But what happens to the broader precinct is more an issue for DJPR, who we are working closely with. So we can connect with them if you're interested, so that they can talk to the broader sort of master plan development stuff they're doing. I assume they have been meeting with you, Helen, the precincts.
Yeah. And we've got some work that we're going to share with the councillors after this presentation as well. So, Bruce, Lancashire.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just a very quick question. There's starting to be a conversation about automated trains in the future. Is it going to be a conventional sort of train driver-driven network, or are we going to start to see that new level of technology brought into the system?
So initially it will still be driver operated. It really gets to not just the trains, but also the signalling system to enable that fully automated solution. And what we're introducing under the Metro Tunnel, which will then be rolled out for the airport section, is what they call CBTC. It's a communication-based train control system, so computer-operated system that has varying levels of functionality. You can go from the driver does most of the work through to the driver does virtually none of the work and doesn't even need to be there. But right now, consistent with what we're doing on Metro Tunnel, there will be drivers on the trains, but the operational function is significantly reduced compared to what you see on the conventional trains at the moment because of the computer-based signalling system that controls the doors and the platform screen doors and how it all synchronises with the train operations. So it could be in the future, but in Melbourne right now, we're not going that far with this one, but it is a major step forward compared to what you see running around the system at the moment. On suburban rail loop, my understanding is they're looking at automated systems because it's a captured network. It doesn't actually necessarily connect with the operating system more broadly, even though there's obviously direct transfer at each of the stations, direct connection to the existing system, but it's a standalone network.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you to Evan, Megan and Ben, and no doubt we will invite you again and hope to have many conversations over the next 10 years.
Yep. Yeah.
I think so. Thank
we'll
you.
We'll be annoying you, Helen.
Sorry?
I said we'll be annoying you probably.
Oh, that's fine. That's completely
I think, Helen, for us is to wish them well all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for making the time available. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah. Okay.
Are we staying in this room or do we?